The piercing bark of a Pomeranian was Alex Morgan's unwelcome 7 a.m. alarm every Saturday for the past 3 months. Today, however, as that familiar yapping crescendoed outside his apartment door, something inside him finally snapped. "Not again," Alex muttered, pulling his pillow over his head. The 32-year-old graphic designer had moved into Oakwood Apartments seeking peace and quiet to focus on his freelance work. Instead, he'd unwittingly stepped into the domain of Brenda Holloway from 4B, known throughout the complex as the Hallway Harasser. The barking continued, followed by 3 sharp knocks. Alex groaned, knowing exactly who it was. He managed to avoid confrontation for 12 weekends, but avoidance had only emboldened his neighbor. He threw off his covers, pulled on a t-shirt, and trudged to the door. "Good morning, neighbor," Brenda chirped as Alex opened the door, her smile unnervingly wide beneath her immaculate blonde bob. Despite the early hours, she was fully dressed in designer athleisure wear, heavy makeup perfectly applied. At her feet, a fluffy white Pomeranian named Sir Barks-a-Lot. "Yes, really?" growled at Alex while straining against a rhinestone-studded leash. "Brenda, it's 7 in the morning." On a Saturday, Alex said, making no effort to hide his irritation. "I know. Perfect time for Sir Barks-a-Lot's walk, don't you think?" She extended the leash toward Alex as if handing over a baton in a relay race. "I got brunch with the girls at 8:30, and you know how he loves his morning walk." "You're such a doll for helping out." Alex stared at the offered leash, then back at Brenda's expectant face. This had been their routine since that one fateful day in January when Alex, being neighborly during a snowstorm, had offered to walk Sir Barks-a-Lot while Brenda recovered from a medical emergency, which he later discovered was a chipped nail. That single act of kindness had somehow morphed into Brenda's assumption that Alex was her personal on-call dog walker. "Brenda, I've told you before, I'm not your dog walker. I helped you out once during an emergency. That doesn't mean I'm available to walk Sir Barks-a-Lot whenever you have brunch plans." Brenda's smile faltered slightly, but she pressed on. "Oh, don't be silly. It's just a quick walk around the block. Besides, I know you don't have anything better to do." She glanced past him into his apartment with poorly disguised disdain. "It's not like you have a real job or anything." Alex felt his blood pressure rising. "I am a professional graphic designer who works from home. That is a real job, Brenda, and regardless, my employment status doesn't obligate me to walk your dog." "Well," Brenda huffed, pulling Sir Barks-a-Lot closer. The dog responded by growling more intensely at Alex. "I never thought you'd be so selfish, after all I've done for you." Alex blinked in genuine confusion. "What exactly have you done for me, Brenda?" "I recommended your little art hobby to my friend Cynthia just last month." "You mean you volunteered my professional services to design your friend's wedding invitations for free, and then gave her my phone number without permission?" Brenda waved dismissively. "It was exposure. Anyway, I really need to get ready. Here." She thrust the leash forward again. "He needs at least 20 minutes and make sure he does his business on Mrs. Peterson's lawn in 2A. She was rude to me at the HOA meeting." Alex took a deep breath, reminding himself that the apartment complex had strict rules about disturbing neighbors. With measured calm, he firmly stated, "No, Brenda. I will not walk your dog today or any day. You need to hire a professional dog walker if you can't handle the responsibility yourself." The change in Brenda's demeanor was instant and alarming. Her carefully composed smile collapsed into a thin, hard line. Her eyes, previously wide with false friendliness, narrowed to slits. Even Sir Barks-a-Lot seemed to sense the shift, his growling briefly interrupted by a confused whimper. "Excuse me?" Brenda's voice had dropped an octave. "After everything I've put up with from you, the loud typing at night, those artistic decorations on your door, that weird cooking smell." Alex stood his ground, hand firmly on the door, ready to close it. "Goodbye, Brenda. Please don't knock on my door this early again." As he began to shut the door, Brenda's face contorted with rage. She jammed her foot in the doorway and pulled out her phone. "You'll regret this," she hissed, fingers flying across her screen. "Nobody says no to me." Little did Alex know that this mundane Saturday morning confrontation was about to spiral into the most ridiculous ordeal of his life. Alex stood frozen in disbelief as Brenda backed away from his doorway, phone pressed to her ear, her face a mask of righteous indignation. Sir Barks-a-Lot's yapping provided a shrill soundtrack to the surreal scene unfolding in the hallway. "Yes, hello? I need to report a situation at Oakwood Apartments." Brenda spoke into her phone with theatrical urgency. "There's a man in 4 of who's refusing to help a woman in distress. I believe I'm being discriminated against." At first, Alex assumed she was faking the call, perhaps talking to her voicemail or pretending to reach authorities to intimidate him. But the distinct voice on the other end asking questions confirmed the impossible. Brenda was actually calling 911 over a refused dog walking request. Ma'am, please state the nature of your emergency. The dispatcher's voice was just loud enough for Alex to hear. My neighbor agreed to provide his service and is now refusing, Brenda declared, shooting Alex a triumphant look. I'm a single woman feeling threatened in my own building. Alex's jaw dropped. Are you serious right now? You're calling emergency services because I won't walk your dog? Brenda covered the phone briefly. This is what happens when people don't honor their commitments, Alexander, she whispered harshly before returning to her call. Yes, he's becoming aggressive now. I don't feel safe. The absurdity of the situation left Alex momentarily speechless. A door opened down the hall and Mrs. Patel from 4D poked her head out, her curious eyes taking in the commotion. Is everything all right? The elderly woman asked, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. Before Alex could respond, Brenda pivoted toward Mrs. Patel, immediately switching to a vulnerable, trembling voice. Oh, Mrs. Patel, thank goodness you're here. I'm being harassed by Mr. Morgan. He agreed to help me with a chronic medical condition and is now abandoning me when I'm most vulnerable. Mrs. Patel's sympathetic expression melted into skepticism. She'd lived in the building for 40 years and had seen her fair share of hallway drama. Is that so? And what medical condition requires dog walking assistance, dear? Brenda faltered, but only for a moment. My doctor has prescribed emotional support activities that I cannot perform myself due to my fibromyalgia. She winced dramatically, clutching her free arm as if in sudden pain. Fascinating, Mrs. Patel replied dryly. Especially since I saw you carrying 6 grocery bags up 3 flights of stairs just yesterday when the elevator was out. The dispatcher's voice emanated from Brenda's phone. Ma'am, is there an actual emergency requiring police, fire, or medical assistance? Yes, Brenda insisted, her voice rising. I need. No, there isn't. Alex called out loudly enough for the dispatcher to hear. She's calling because I refuse to walk her dog. There was a pause on the line. Ma'am, misuse of emergency services is a punishable offense, the dispatcher said sternly. Brenda's face flushed crimson. I am in danger. This man has been stalking me, watching my routines. He knows exactly when I leave every Saturday. Alex couldn't believe what he was hearing. You knock on my door every Saturday. How is that me stalking you? By now, the commotion had attracted more neighbors. Raj from 4C emerged in pajama pants and a rumpled t-shirt, his usually tidy beard uncombed. What's happening? He asked, rubbing sleep from his eyes. It's barely past 7. Brenda is calling 911 because Alex won't walk her dog, Mrs. Patel explained, her tone making clear how ridiculous she found the situation. Wait, those 7 a.m. barking sessions are because of you. Raj turned to Brenda accusingly. I've been blaming the unit above me for months. While hallway discussion escalated, Alex noticed a series of notifications lighting up his phone. Neighbors from the building's community app were messaging about the disturbance, with several people reporting that they too had been cornered by Brenda for various favors over the months. The emergency dispatcher, still on the line, had apparently heard enough. Ma'am, based on what I'm hearing, there's no emergency. I'm going to disconnect this call, but be advised that officers may follow up regarding misuse of emergency services. Don't you dare hang up on me, Brenda shrieked. The call had already ended. She stared at her phone in shock, as if it had personally betrayed her. In the silence that followed, Sir Barks-a-Lot chose that moment to relieve himself, right on Brenda's pristine white sneakers. See what you've done. Brenda screeched at Alex, her composure completely shattered. This is all your fault. Alex, despite the absurdity, maintained his calm. Brenda, I think you need to take your dog out yourself. Now, this isn't over, she hissed, tugging Sir Barks-a-Lot toward the elevator. The building manager will hear about this. The HOA will hear about this. The city council will hear about this. As Brenda retreated down the hallway, trailing dog leash and wounded pride, Mrs. Patel sidled up to Alex with a conspiratorial smile. That woman needed a reality check. But I'd lock your door tonight if I were you. She strikes me as the type to put sugar in your gas tank. Alex sighed heavily, watching Brenda's dramatic exit. I don't get on a car. Then I check your coffee for the next few weeks, Raj added with a. By Monday morning, Alex had almost convinced himself that the weekend's confrontation with Brenda would blow over. People called 911 for ridiculous reasons all the time, right? Surely Brenda would be too embarrassed to escalate things further after having an audience of neighbors witness her meltdown. He was wrong. Alex was in the middle of a Zoom meeting with an important client when his doorbell rang repeatedly, followed by aggressive knocking. He muted himself, apologized to the client via chat, and peered through the peephole to find not Brenda, but a stern-looking man in a cheap suit flanked by Brenda herself, who stood with her arms crossed, Sir Barks-a-Lot clutched to her chest like a fluffy shield. Mr. Morgan, this is Trevor Wilkins from Oakwood Property Management. I need to speak with you immediately regarding a serious complaint, the man called through the door. Alex's heart sank. He was in the middle of presenting a branding package worth thousands of dollars, and now this? He typed a quick message to his client requesting 5 minutes and reluctantly opened the door. Mr. Morgan, Ms. Holloway has filed a formal complaint against you for harassment, intimidation, and violation of the Good Neighbor Clause in your lease agreement, Trevor stated, not bothering with pleasantries. Behind him, Brenda's face was a portrait of manufactured victimhood, complete with glistening eyes. Excuse me? She's the one, whoa. Trevor held up a hand. I understand there are two sides to every story, but Ms. Holloway has provided documentation of your agreement to provide pet care services, which you are now refusing to honor. Documentation? What documentation? Alex sputtered. Brenda produced her phone with a flourish, displaying a text conversation. Alex leaned closer, recognizing his own message from months ago. Sure, I can help with Sir Barks-a-Lot today while you're at urgent care. Hope your nail feels better soon. This is from January during the snowstorm, Alex explained. It was a one-time offer to help during what she claimed was an emergency. He's twisting things, Brenda interjected. We had a verbal agreement that covered ongoing assistance. I've been paying him in networking opportunities and social references. Trevor looked uncomfortable but pressed on. Ms. Holloway has also reported that you've been monitoring her movements and creating a hostile living environment. From inside his apartment, Alex could hear his client try and get his attention on the Zoom call. His career was literally hanging in the balance while he defended himself against accusations of being a dog-walking stalker. This is absurd, Alex said firmly. I have a client meeting happening right now that I need to get back to. Brenda has been harassing me for months, demanding free dog-walking services. Yesterday, she called 911 because I refused. Ask any of our neighbors, Mrs. Patel, Raj from 4C, anyone. He's lying, Brenda said tearfully. I called for help because I felt threatened. Sir Barks-a-Lot, perhaps sensing the tension, let out a series of high-pitched barks directly into Trevor's ear, causing the property manager to wince. Look, Alex said, struggling to maintain his composure. I understand you have to follow up on complaints, but this is clearly harassment from her side. I have work obligations right now, but I'm happy to show you evidence later today, including security footage from the hallway that will show Brenda knocking on my door every Saturday morning. Trevor's eyebrows rose. There's security footage. The camera at the end of the hall, Alex pointed. Installed last month after someone kept stealing welcome mats, remember? Brenda's confident expression faltered slightly. Apparently, she had forgotten about the new security cameras. I wasn't aware the cameras were operational yet, Trevor admitted, now looking at Brenda with growing suspicion. They've been working for 3 weeks, Alex confirmed. Check with maintenance. Trevor cleared his throat awkwardly. Well, perhaps we should review all available evidence before proceeding further. Ms. Holloway, why don't we? This is completely unacceptable. Brenda interrupted, her voice rising to a pitch that made Sir Barks-a-Lot flatten his ears. I am being victimized in my own building, and you're taking his side. Just then, a notification chimed on Alex's phone. He glanced down to see a message from Raj. Heard the commotion. Created a building group chat called Brenda's Victims Support Group. Already 7 members. Should I add you? Following the message was a screenshot showing messages from various neighbors documenting their own encounters with Brenda. Babysitting demands, borrowing items never returned, noise complaints filed over imagined slights, and yes, multiple attempts to recruit dog walkers. Mr. Wilkins, Alex said, turning his phone toward the property manager, it seems I'm not the only resident who's had issues with Ms. Holloway. Trevor's professional demeanor cracked as he scrolled through the messages. Ms. Holloway, did you really report Mr. Gonzalez in 2-aid immigration because he wouldn't help you move your sofa? Brenda's face flushed. He was very rude about it. He's been a U.S. citizen for 12 years, Trevor replied flatly. The sound of a door opening down the hall drew their attention. Mrs. Patel emerged with her phone in hand. Oh, Mr. Wilkins. Perfect timing. I was just about to email you the video I took yesterday of this young lady calling 911 because Alex wouldn't walk her dog. Would you like to see it now? The blood drained from Brenda's face as Trevor turned to her with a look of growing comprehension. Ms. Holloway filing false reports with the management office is grounds for lease review. It wasn't false, Brenda protested, but her voice lacked conviction. And misuse of emergency services is a criminal offense, Mrs. Patel added helpfully, tapping her phone. I've already sent this recording to that nice officer Rodriguez who handles community relations for our precinct. Trevor straightened his tie, professional mask firmly back in place. Mr. Morgan, I apologize for the interruption. We'll continue this discussion at a more convenient time. Turning to Brenda, his tone cooled considerably. Ms. Holloway, I need to see you in my office. Now. As they departed, Alex couldn't help but notice Brenda's parting glare, a look of pure venom that promised that conflict was far from over. He closed his door, heart pounding, and rushed back to his abandoned client call, where he found himself apologizing profusely to an empty screen. The client had disconnected. Alex slumped into his chair, wondering how his simple refusal to walk a Pomeranian had spiraled into potentially losing a major contract. His phone buzzed again with another message from Raj. Meeting in Mrs. Patel's apartment tonight at 7. Bringing evidence against Hurricane Brenda. You in? Despite his frustration, Alex couldn't help but smile at the nickname. He typed back, I'll bring the coffee. This might be a long night. Little did he know that the neighborhood coalition forming against Brenda was about to face its greatest challenge. Brenda had connections on the Oakwood Homeowners Association board, and she wasn't afraid to use them. Mrs. Patel's apartment was unlike anything Alex had expected. While the exterior matched every other unit in Oakwood apartments, stepping inside felt like entering a different world. Colorful tapestries adorned the walls, the air was fragrant with spices, and a surprisingly high-tech setup of monitors displayed feeds from various angles of the building's hallways and common areas. You're wondering about the surveillance? Mrs. Patel said, noting Alex's wide-eyed stare as she handed him a cup of chai. When you've lived as long as I have, you learn that information is power, especially when dealing with people like Brenda Holloway. The gathering in Mrs. Patel's living room resembled a war council. Raj sat cross-legged on a floor cushion, typing furiously on his laptop. The Gonzalez family from 2 occupied the couch, their teenage daughter translating the rapid-fire Spanish conversation between her parents. Emily from 5C was organizing a spreadsheet of Brenda incidents on her tablet, while twin brothers Mark and Mike from the ground floor apartment were setting up a whiteboard they'd brought along. I had no idea so many people had issues with Brenda, Alex remarked, taking a seat at the dining table. That's by design, Mrs. Patel explained. She isolates her victims, makes each person think they're the only one dealing with her unreasonable demands. Raj looked up from his laptop. Classic divide and conquer strategy. But not anymore. He turned his screen around to reveal a meticulously organized timeline of Brenda's reign of terror at Oakwood Apartments. 2 years of documented incidents categorized by type of demand, severity, and outcome. My family has lived here for 6 years, Mr. Gonzalez said through his daughter's translation. That woman reported us to every agency she could think of because we wouldn't cater her daughter's quinceañera for free. My restaurant nearly lost its health license because of her false claims. Similar stories emerged as neighbors shared their experiences. Emily had been pressured to provide free personal training sessions. The twins had repeatedly found their delivery packages mistakenly opened by Brenda. Mrs. Patel herself had endured months of Brenda insisting that her ethnic cooking was violating building codes, until Mrs. Patel revealed she sat on the city's Cultural Heritage Board. So what's our plan? Alex asked, overwhelmed by the scope of Brenda's misdeeds. I lost a client today because of her interruption. That's actual financial damage. Mark uncapped a marker and approached the whiteboard. We need to think strategically. Mrs. Patel says Brenda's got connections on the HOA board. The elderly woman nodded gravely. Her cousin Diane is the vice president, and her weekly tennis partner Gerald is the treasurer. That explains why my noise complaints against her dog were always dismissed, Emily muttered. A notification sound from Raj's laptop interrupted the discussion. His expression darkened as he read the screen. What is it? Alex asked. An email just went out to all residents, Raj replied, his voice tight. There's an emergency HOA meeting tomorrow evening regarding, quote, disturbing behavior from certain residents that threatens the harmonious community atmosphere of Oakwood Apartments. That has to be about us, Alex said, feeling a chill despite the warmth of Mrs. Patel's apartment. It gets worse, Raj continued reading. The board will be discussing amendments to the community guidelines, including a new good neighbor commitment requiring residents to participate in community support and assistance when reasonably requested by fellow residents. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Brenda was attempting to codify her entitlement into actual building rules. She's trying to make it mandatory for us to help her whenever she asks, Emily whispered in disbelief. Mrs. Patel calmly sipped her tea. I've lived through 3 dictatorships in my lifetime. This one wears Lululemon and carries a Pomeranian, but the tactics are familiar. The whiteboard now bore the heading Operation Free Oakwood, with Mark adding bullet points as the group brainstormed. We need to attend that meeting in full force, Mr. Gonzalez insisted. Show the board this isn't just one disgruntled resident. And bring evidence, his wife added. All the documentation we've collected. Alex's phone buzzed with a text from his upstairs neighbor, Sophie, who wasn't at the meeting. Heads up, just saw Brenda going door to door with some kind of petition. She's working her way up from the lobby. He showed the message to the group. She's mobilizing too. Mrs. Patel's eyes narrowed as she tapped a few keys on her laptop, bringing up the lobby camera feed. Sure enough, there was Brenda, clipboard in hand, Sir Barks-a-Lot tucked under her arm, speaking animatedly to a bewildered-looking new resident. "We need to counter her narrative," Rav said. "She's going to paint us as the unreasonable ones who refuse to help a neighbor in need." The evening progressed with increasingly detailed planning. The Gonzalez family would prepare statements about Brenda's false reports. Emily would document the financial impact of Brenda's demands on residents who work from home. The twins would compile a record of borrowed items never returned. As for Alex, he had a different role. "You're patient zero in this outbreak," Mrs. Patel told him. "The dog-walking refusal that broke the camel's back. You need to speak at the meeting, put a face to the victims of Hurricane Brenda." Alex wasn't sure he wanted to be a public face of an anti-Brenda movement, but he nodded anyway. "I'll do it, but I'm not much of a public speaker." "You don't need to be," Mrs. Patel assured him. "Just tell the truth. Sometimes that's the most revolutionary act of all." The meeting adjourned close to midnight, with each resident assigned specific tasks to prepare for the showdown at the HOA meeting. As Alex walked back to his apartment, he couldn't help but feel a mixture of dread and determination. He moved to Oakwood seeking peace and quiet, and now found himself at the center of a bizarre neighbor feud that felt more like a political thriller than real life. When he reached his door, he found a sealed envelope that had been slipped underneath. Inside was a typed note. "I know about your little meeting tonight. You think you've won, but this is just beginning. Remember, I've lived here longer, I know people you don't, and I never lose. Enjoy your dog-free weekend while you can. P.S. Sir Barks-a-Lot sends his regards." Attached to the note was a small tuft of white fur. Alex stared at the threatening message, realizing that what had started as a simple refusal to walk a dog had morphed into something far more sinister. Brenda wasn't just entitled and unreasonable. She was vindictive, calculating, and apparently willing to go to disturbing lengths to maintain her power in the building. Tomorrow's OA meeting wouldn't just determine whether Alex had to walk Sir Barks-a-Lot. It would decide whether Oakwood Apartments remained under the rule of a pint-sized dictator with a designer handbag and a fluffy sidekick. He texted Raj. "Found a threatening note from Brenda. We need to be ready for anything tomorrow." The response came seconds later. "Already on it. Mrs. Patel is installing an extra camera facing your door tonight. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we make history." As Alex tried to fall asleep, he couldn't help but wonder how many other buildings had their own Brendas, terrorizing neighbors with trivial demands backed by outsized entitlement. Perhaps their stand at Oakwood would inspire others to resist unreasonable Karens everywhere. Or perhaps they were about to make powerful enemies who could make their living situation unbearable. Either way, there was no turning back now. The Oakwood Apartments community room had never been so packed. Typically, HOA meetings attracted only the most dedicated or argumentative residents, plus those lured by the promise of free cookies. Tonight, however, finding an empty seat was like trying to get concert tickets for a surprise Taylor Swift appearance. Alex arrived 15 minutes early, as strategized during their planning session, only to find the room already half full. Brenda sat in the front row, Sir Barks-a-Lot perched on her lap wearing what appeared to be a tiny service dog vest that definitely hadn't been part of his wardrobe before. Beside her sat a stern-looking woman with the same blonde bob, Cousin Diane, Alex presumed, and a balding man who kept checking his Rolex, likely Gerald, a tennis partner/treasurer. "Right on time," Raj whispered, materializing beside Alex with a laptop tucked under his arm. "Mrs. Patel is saving seats for us in the second row. Strategic positioning, close enough to make eye contact with the board, far enough that Brenda can't easily turn around to intimidate us." They made their way to where Mrs. Patel sat regally, dressed in a formal sari as if attending a diplomatic summit rather than a condo meeting. Around them, the room continued to fill with faces Alex recognized from their coalition, along with many other residents curious about the sudden emergency session. At precisely 7 p.m., a woman with a sleek gray bob and an expensive-looking pantsuit called the meeting to order, introducing herself as Patricia Winters, HOA president. "Thank you all for attending this emergency session," Patricia began, her voice carrying the practiced authority of someone who spent decades getting her way in boardrooms. "We have several items on our agenda tonight, but first, I understand Ms. Holloway has an urgent community concern to present." Brenda rose dramatically, clutching Sir Barks-a-Lot to her chest like a furry shield. She had clearly dressed for the occasion in a conservative skirt suit that screamed victimized professional, a stark contrast to her usual athleisure attire. "Thank you, Madam President," Brenda began, her voice trembling with well-rehearsed emotion. "I come before you today not just for myself, but for all vulnerable residents of Oakwood who may one day need assistance from their neighbors." Alex felt his blood pressure rising as Brenda launched into a completely fictional account of their arrangement, one where he had enthusiastically volunteered to be her regular dog walker, only to cruelly renege on his promise, leaving her stranded due to her medical condition that prevented her from walking Sir Barks-a-Lot herself. And when I politely requested he honor his commitment, Brenda continued, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. Mr. Morgan became hostile and threatening, to the point where I felt it necessary to call for help. Murmurs rippled through the room. Alex noticed several residents who hadn't been at Mrs. Patel's meeting looking at him with suspicion. Furthermore, Brenda pressed on, I've since discovered that Mr. Morgan has organized a harassment campaign against me, recruiting other residents to intimidate and threaten me in my own home. At this, Cousin Diane nodded solemnly, while Gerald frowned in manufactured concern. In light of these disturbing events, Brenda concluded, I propose an amendment to our community guidelines, the Good Neighbor Commitment, requiring residents to provide reasonable assistance to fellow community members in need. This would protect vulnerable residents like myself from being abandoned in our time of need. Patricia nodded thoughtfully. Thank you, Ms. Holloway. Before we open this for discussion, I understand Mr. Morgan wishes to respond. Alex stood, heart pounding. Public speaking had never been his strong suit, but indignation overrode anxiety as he faced the room. Thank you, he began, his voice steadier than he expected. What Ms. Holloway described is a work of complete fiction. I helped her walk her dog once, during a snowstorm in January when she claimed to have a medical emergency, which turned out to be a chipped nail. This earned a few chuckles from the audience, encouraging Alex to continue. Since then, she has knocked on my door at 7 a.m. every Saturday, demanding I walk Sir Barks-a-Lot while she goes to brunch. When I finally refused last weekend, she called 911 and reported me for harassment. She then filed false complaints with building management, interrupted a client meeting that cost me a valuable contract, and last night left a threatening note with dog hair at my door. Brenda gasped theatrically. That's a complete lie. I would never. We have evidence, Alex interrupted, nodding to Raj, who connected his laptop to the room's projector. Security footage of Ms. Holloway knocking on my door every Saturday morning for the past 3 months. Audio recording of her 911 call. Testimonials from multiple residents about similar experiences. And he paused for effect, footage from my own doorbell camera of Ms. Holloway delivering this note last night at 2 a.m. The screen illuminated with a crystal-clear image of Brenda, hair wrapped in a silk scarf, furtively sliding an envelope under Alex's door in the middle of the night. A collective gasp arose from the audience. Even Patricia Winters looked taken aback. This isn't just about dog walking, Alex continued, gaining confidence. Ms. Holloway has systematically targeted residents of this building, demanding free services, borrowing items without returning them, and retaliating against anyone who refuses her demands. Mrs. Patel stood next for dignified presence, commanding instant attention. If I may, Madam President, we have compiled a comprehensive record of Ms. Holloway's behavior over the past 2 years. What followed was a methodical dismantling of Brenda's facade. One by one, residents stood to share their experiences. The Gonzalez family described the health department inspection triggered by Brenda's false reports after they refused to cater her event for free. Emily presented screenshots of Brenda's harassing messages demanding free personal training. The twins displayed photos of packages that had been mistakenly opened by Brenda, including a birthday gift that was resealed after being partially unwrapped. As the testimonials continued, Brenda's face cycled through expressions, indignation, disbelief, and finally, when Mrs. Patel played the full audio of the 911 call, something approaching panic. This is a conspiracy. Brenda finally erupted, standing so abruptly that Sir Barks-a-Lot tumbled from her lap with an indignant yap. They're all lying. They've hated me from the beginning because I maintained standards in this building. Her outburst only strengthened the case against her. Even Cousin Diane was inching away, clearly not wanting to be associated with the meltdown unfolding before the entire community. Patricia Winters cleared her throat. Ms. Holloway, these are serious allegations supported by substantial evidence. Your proposed good neighbor commitment appears less about community support and more about forcing residents to provide you with free services. You don't understand, Brenda insisted, her composure fracturing. I contribute so much to this community. I organize the Christmas party. I monitor the hallways for dress code violations. I keep track of who has visitors staying too long. A voice from the back called out, none of those are things we asked you to do. Laughter rippled through the room and Brenda's face flushed crimson. She looked to Cousin Diane and Gerald for support, but both were suddenly fascinated by their phones, refusing to make eye contact. Well, Patricia said, straightening her papers, in light of this information, I propose we table Ms. Holloway's good neighbor commitment and instead discuss the creation of an anti-harassment policy with specific language prohibiting the behaviors we've seen documented today. Brenda's gasp was audible throughout the room. You can't do that. I'm a victim here. Actually, Gerald finally spoke, apparently deciding which way the wind was blowing. As treasurer, I fully support allocating funds to install additional security cameras in common areas to protect residents from unwanted solicitations. The betrayal was too much. Brenda snatched up Sir Barks-a-Lot and stormed toward the exit, pausing only to deliver a final quivering declaration. You'll all regret this. My attorney will be in touch, and don't expect me to organize the Christmas party this year. The door slammed behind her with theatrical force. In the silence that followed, Patricia Winters allowed herself a small smile. Well, that was illuminating. Now shall we vote on the anti-harassment policy? The policy passed unanimously, along with provisions for additional security measures, a formal process for addressing neighbor disputes, and, in a particularly satisfying touch, quiet hours beginning at 9 p.m. and ending at 8 a.m., making Brenda's 7 a.m. dog-walking solicitations explicitly prohibited. As the meeting adjourned, residents gathered around Alex and the other coalition members, sharing their own Brenda stories and expressing relief that someone had finally stood up to the building's most notorious resident. What the hell? Alex sputtered, ripping down the nearest flyer. Raj was already tearing down others, cursing under his breath. She's gone full nuclear, Raj muttered. Check the QR code at the bottom. Alex scanned it with his phone, which opened to a freshly created website, Oakwood Safety Alliance. The site featured testimonials from anonymous concerned residents describing Alex as everything from a noise violator to a suspected peeping Tom. The most outrageous claims suggested he had been seen mishandling Sir Barks-a-Lot and other pets in the building. This is libel, Alex said, feeling sick. She's actually accusing me of animal abuse now. Before Raj could respond, both their phones buzzed with a notification from the building's community app. It was a message from Trevor Wilkins, the property manager. Attention all residents. Unauthorized flyers have been posted throughout the building containing false and potentially defamatory information about a resident. These are being removed and the situation is being addressed. Anyone with information about who posted these materials should contact the management office immediately. A minute later, a private message popped up on Alex's phone from Trevor. Mr. Morgan, please see me in my office regarding this incident. We're taking this very seriously. The property manager looked genuinely concerned when Alex arrived at his office 30 minutes later. I've already contacted our legal team, Trevor explained. This crosses several lines: building policy violations, potential defamation, misuse of the Oakwood name to create a false impression of an official safety notice. Thank you, Alex said, relieved that at least the management wasn't buying into Brenda's allegations. Do you know for sure it was Ms. Holloway? Trevor's professional demeanor cracked slightly as he rolled his eyes. Security footage shows her entering the building at 4 a.m. wearing a hooded sweatshirt and sunglasses. Indoors, before sunrise, with a stack of papers. So unless we have another resident with a flair for dramatic disguises and early morning activities, I think we can safely assume. As Alex left the management office, his phone exploded with supportive messages from the anti-Brenda coalition. Mrs. Patel had already organized a reputation defense team to monitor and report the defamatory website. The Gonzalez family offered to post positive testimonials about Alex anywhere needed. Emily suggested a formal cease and desist letter signed by multiple residents. Their swift response was touching, but Alex still felt violated. What had started as a simple refusal to walk a dog had escalated to his reputation and livelihood being attacked. As a freelancer, he relied on his good name and online presence, exactly what Brenda was attempting to poison. Back in his apartment, Alex tried to focus on work, but concentration was impossible. A knock at his door around noon made him jump. Peering through the peephole, he was surprised to see not another neighbor, but a uniformed police officer. Mr. Morgan, the officer asked when Alex cautiously opened the door. I'm Officer Rodriguez. I was hoping to speak with you regarding some ongoing situations in this building. Alex's stomach dropped. Had Brenda filed a police report now? Was he about to be arrested based on her fabricated claims? Of course, he said, trying to keep his voice steady as he invited the officer in. Officer Rodriguez declined to sit, instead remaining standing as he consulted a small notebook. I understand there have been some disputes between you and another resident, Ms. Holloway. That's putting it mildly, Alex confirmed, then briefly recounted the dog-walking demands, the 911 call, and now the defamatory flyers. To his surprise, Officer Rodriguez nodded as if this confirmed information he already had. Ms. Holloway is known to us, he said diplomatically. She's filed 17 complaints against neighbors across 3 different residential buildings in the past 5 years. 17? Alex echoed in disbelief. That we know of, the officer confirmed. I'm actually here because Mrs. Patel contacted me about the recent escalation. She's been a valuable community liaison for our precinct for years. As they continued talking, it became clear that Officer Rodriguez wasn't investigating Alex, but rather building a case file on Brenda's pattern of behavior. The police had been monitoring her activities since the false 911 call, especially after Mrs. Patel had forwarded them documentation of Brenda's history of harassment. "We can't prevent her from filing reports," Officer Rodriguez explained, "but we can and do note patterns of misuse of emergency services and false reports. It helps us prioritize our resources appropriately." After the officer left, Alex felt marginally better. At least the authorities weren't being fooled by Brenda's victim act. Still, the situation remained unsettling. How far would she go? What would be her next move? He didn't have to wait long to find out. That evening, as Alex returned from picking up takeout, he found his apartment door slightly ajar. Heart pounding, he set down his food and called Raj for backup before cautiously pushing the door open. The apartment appeared untouched at first glance, until he entered the kitchen and found Sir Barksalot sitting on his counter, wearing a tiny bow tie with a note attached to his collar. The Pomeranian, surprisingly, wasn't barking or growling, but instead seemed somewhat subdued. The note read simply, "He's your problem now. Good luck getting rid of him." Before Alex could process this development, his phone rang with a call from an unknown number. "Hello, Mr. Morgan," came Brenda's voice, dripping with false sweetness. "I see you found my little gift. Sir Barksalot is now officially yours. All of his registration and microchip information has been transferred to your name. I've also taken the liberty of informing Animal Control that you're his owner, with specific notes about how you've been caring for him for months." "What are you talking about?" Alex demanded. "You can't just abandon your dog in my apartment." "Abandon? Never. I've simply formalized the arrangement you've had for months, the one you cruelly tried to terminate. The paperwork shows you voluntarily took ownership weeks ago. If you try to get rid of him now, it'll be you charged with animal abandonment, not me." The line went dead before Alex could respond. He stared at Sir Barksalot, who stared back with what almost seemed like embarrassment. "She set us both up, didn't she, buddy?" Alex muttered. As if in answer, Sir Barksalot gave a small, pitiful whine. Nothing like his usual piercing bark. It was then Alex noticed how unkempt the dog's usually pristine coat appeared and how he hadn't moved from his seated position even to investigate the takeout containers. Concerned, Alex reached out cautiously to pet the dog, expecting to be snapped at as usual. Instead, Sir Barksalot leaned into his hand with another whimper. A quick text to Mrs. Patel, "Emergency. Brenda abandoned her dog in my apartment," brought not only his neighbor but also her sister, who happened to be a retired veterinarian. "This dog is dehydrated and hasn't been properly fed for days," the sister declared after a quick examination. "And I suspect he's been sedated. That's why he's so docile. She's been neglecting him, likely since the HOA meeting." Mrs. Patel was already on the phone, her voice crisp with authority. "Officer Rodriguez, it's Divya Patel. We have a situation involving animal cruelty and breaking and entering at Oakwood Apartments." What followed was a whirlwind evening of police reports, veterinary care, and building security reviews. Security footage showed Brenda using a stolen maintenance key to enter Alex's apartment. A series of